with us Brother Hasan Shibly. He's the executive director of CARE Florida. He's a civil rights lawyer, and he's advised the White House and Homeland Security on preserving liberty and security. With that said, he's going to discuss Islamophobes' tactics and identify solutions to protect our Muslim communities. Please welcome to the stage Brother Hasan Shibly.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Sayyidina Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Alhamdulillah, it's a tremendous blessing and honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to join you in this very important discussion on challenging Islamophobia. My brothers and sisters, Islamophobia is a blessing for us because it allows us to be written before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They stayed back. They chose not to defend his message. But Allah does not describe them as those who stayed back. Rather, He describes them as those who were held back. Al-Mukhallafun, those who were held back. Why? Because defending the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an honor, and Allah only allows those whom He loves for that great honor. I was speaking to one of my teachers and I was asking him, I said, respected Sheikh, I see, as we study the Islamophobia network, which we'll talk about today, that the enemies of Islam are spending over $200 million to demonize Islam in America. Why is it that they're able to spend all this wealth to attack the deen of Allah, and we are, relatively speaking, spending so little to defend the deen? And he gave a very simple answer. Number one, the deen of Allah never relied on finances to flourish. And number two, Allah allows anybody to spend to demonize Islam and attack Islam, but He only allows those whom He loves to spend their wealth to defend the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's an honor. So we should turn to Allah with hearts of gratitude and ask Allah that, Ya Allah, use us to defend your deen, to challenge Islamophobia, and by challenging Islamophobia, allow us to make America and the world a better place for all people. Because as we will discuss today, Islamophobia is a threat not simply to the American Muslim community, but it's a threat to this entire country. The sister mentioned some of the hate crimes, and my office has dealt with an over 500% increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes that have happened since November of last year. Attacks against Muslims in America have increased by over 5%, but frankly, the biggest victims of Islamophobia often are not even Muslims. They're people simply perceived to be different. So before we continue our discussion, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never takes, He only gives. Every challenge that we face in our life is really an opportunity for us to turn to Allah and to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reality is to be in difficult times, in challenging times, and use those challenges to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by serving Him and serving His creation. It is better than being in good times, but we allow those good times to turn us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our message and our faith is a faith of service, that we are to honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we are to honor the creation of Allah. One cannot honor Allah without honoring His creation. And Islamophobia has forced us to organize ourselves In Florida, we've built the strongest civil rights organization that defends the rights of anyone who is oppressed, regardless of their race or religion, because that is the message of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who came as a mercy for all creation. So in responding to Islamophobia, we've responded by building the strongest civil rights organization that defends the rights of all Americans. So in that, Islamophobia is a blessing because it's forced us to organize ourselves. Many of us are immigrants. We came to America seeking freedom, seeking liberty, seeking opportunity. And the absolute best gift we can give back to this country is the very same principles of liberty and justice that we came here seeking. And that will be our legacy. Our legacy will be that we are defenders of justice, we are defenders of civil rights, we are defenders of diversity at a time when politicians and hate profiteers are investing their energy in promoting fear and hate to gain a few votes at the expense of dividing our nation and turning Americans against each other. And that's why my message always to our fellow Americans is our enemies can never destroy us. We can only destroy ourselves if we allow fear and hatred to turn us against each other and be willing to undermine the principles of liberty and justice that make America so great. At the same time, as Muslims, our enemies can never destroy us. We can only destroy ourselves if we allow the fear and the hatred that is targeting us to turn us away from our faith, which is the source of our strength and honor and dignity. Look how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he transformed the worst of people and he made them the greatest of people. Umar radiallahu anh, he said, we are a people that have been honored by Islam, and if we ever seek honor through other than Islam, we will be humiliated. And subhanAllah, look at the beautiful message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many of the greatest heroes of Islam were at one point its worst enemies. So we should not bear hatred to those who oppose us. Rather, through compassion and love, we must strive harder to truly represent the beauty that is our faith. And through that beautiful message, transform, inshallah, our worst enemies into our greatest supporters, as there are many examples of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing that. When it comes to Islamophobia, we must recognize that it is one of the most dangerous threats that faces America and all Americans. It's a political tool that is used to undermine freedom and promote conflict and war. And those are the two biggest negative impacts of Islamophobia. Number one, it's a tool that's used to undermine freedom within America, and it's a tool that's used to promote conflict globally. How so? There's an excellent book, and if you take one thing away from my talk today, order this book. It's called The Muslims Are Coming by Professor Arun Kunnani. And he writes in the book, The Muslims Are Coming, that Islamophobia is a form of structural racism directed at Muslims, which is sustained through a symbiotic relationship with the official thinking and practices of the war on terror. Its significance does not lie primarily in the individual prejudice it generates, but in the wider political consequences, its enabling of systematic violations of civil rights and the rights of Muslims, and its demonization of actions taken to remedy those violations. The war on terror, with its vast death tolls in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, and elsewhere, could not be sustained without radicalized dehumanization of its Muslim victims. What does that mean? Take another quote from Professor Deepa Kumar from Rutgers University. She writes, when a nation goes to war with an external enemy, it inevitably turns against those that it sees as incarnations of that enemy within its borders. The situation of Muslims in the US today bears a strong resemblance to that of Japanese Americans during World War II. What happened to them? They were thrown in internment camps, and unfortunately, some of Trump's advisors today are using what happened to the Japanese Americans to justify their policies towards the American Muslims. She continues, she says, statistically, Americans are more likely to die from a bolt of lightning than from an act of terrorism. The focus on American Muslims serves not to keep the American people safe, but to whip up a sense of fear and paranoia, which can be used to squash dissent and win consent for violations of civil rights at home and abroad. So what does all this mean? It means that Islamophobia is a tool that is used to undermine freedom in America. It's a tool that is used by politicians for them to gain more power. And it's led to undermining civil rights within America. A perfect example of that happened in Tennessee. In Tennessee, they tried to pass a law saying practicing Islam is treason, punishable by 20 years in jail. Now, thank God that law failed on its face. But that law did not offend me as a Muslim, rather offended me as an American. It offended me as a lawyer, somebody who's taken an oath to protect freedom of religion that is protected in the US Constitution. So we find that those who are promoting Islamophobia are in fact contradicting the principles of the Constitution, and they're not simply against Muslims, but they're actually against the US Constitutions. And our duty as American Muslims is to protect the Constitution, which protects the rights of all people to practice their religion, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to defend people's freedom to choose to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even protect the freedom of those who chose not to, knowing that they will be accountable before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our message is a message of compassion and love, whereby we invite people to liberate them from oppression, and that we stand to defend all those who are oppressed, regardless of their race or religion. The unfortunate reality is the Islamophobia industry has led to millions of people supporting the idea that Islam should become illegal. It's led to an increase in the government targeting law-abiding members of the American Muslim community. It's led to an increase in hate crimes. It's undermined the principles of liberty and justice that make America so great. And the source of Islamophobia, my brothers and sisters, and this is a very important point, the Georgetown University, their Bridge Initiative documented how Islamophobia is not connected to bad things done by Muslims, because there are bad people in every group that do bad things. Rather, Islamophobia is connected to politicians in their quest for authority, promoting fear and hate to scapegoat a community in order to gain more power and more authority. That is where Islamophobia is rooted. Islamophobia is also rooted in the $200 million industry, and you can go to www.islamophobia.org and read our latest report on the Islamophobia industry, where you have several foundations that put tens of millions of dollars to promote misinformation against the American Muslim community, and in doing so, threaten the principles of liberty which we so value and cherish, and which is why many of us choose to be Americans. As immigrants, we are Americans by choice because we value the principles of freedom and liberty enshrined in the Constitution, and Islamophobia is a direct threat to that. The lies that they promote against the American Muslim community are no different than the lies promoted against the Jewish community in Germany 70 years ago. These are not my words, but the words of one of the leading rabbis in Florida, Rabbi Shapiro, who said what's being said about Muslims today is no different than what was said about Jews in Germany 70 years ago. And that's why, unfortunately, in one of the studies, it has shown that 50% of Americans who never met a Muslim said Muslims should have to wear special ID cards. What was the last group that was forced to wear special ID cards? It was the Jews in Germany. Again, Islamophobia is the threat not just to Muslims, but to the very principles of liberty and justice that make America so great. And ultimately, it's driven by ignorance. Ignorance is our worst enemy, my brothers and sisters. Ignorance leads people to misunderstand each other, which leads to fear. The fear leads to hate, and hate ultimately leads to the acts of discrimination and violence. And our job is to challenge that ignorance through constructive engagement, and not letting others speak for us, but ourselves investing and representing ourselves for ourselves. When we look at how much the Islamophobes are spending to demonize Islam, we have to ask ourselves, what are we spending to challenge that? This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us in the Quran, وَأَنفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Spend in the path of Allah and don't lead yourself to destruction. And that's not just talking about the hereafter, that's talking about the situation in the dunya. If the enemies of Islam are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to demonize Islam in America, and we're not investing in dawah, we're not investing in community service, we're not investing in winning over hearts and minds by serving the people and educating them about the beauty of our faith through service, we will have no one to blame but ourselves when the majority of Americans are willing to support laws that demonize us and target us and threaten our very principles of liberty. And this is why, my brothers and sisters, it's because of the Islamophobia industry and the hundreds of millions of dollars spent by Islamophobes that the situation when it comes to the civil rights of American Muslims today, it's worse off than it was in the days after 9/11. But nonetheless, America is still one of the best places in the world to be a Muslim. As Muslims, we have no excuse not to practice our faith. Being Americans should be our excuse to practice Islam more, not less. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us, and the law is also with us. Whatever fitna we face in holding on to our deen, that fitna is everywhere in the time that we live. But the freedom and the liberty to practice the kalima of La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah we find in very few other places. I remember visiting Turkey not long ago. Now the situation has changed, alhamdulillah, but in Turkey not long ago, two young Muslim sisters saw me and they said, Brother Shibly, do you wear your kufi and beard in America? I said, of course, I don't roll up my beard when I get back to customs. They said, we're in a Muslim majority country, but if we were to wear the hijab, they would kick us out of the university and prosecute us. And we see the situation of Muslims in many Muslim majority countries. They're suffering. In Syria, over 500,000 Muslims slaughtered. My own cousin died seeking the freedom and liberty that we often take for granted. Don't take this freedom and liberty to practice your faith for granted, because if you take it for granted and you don't invest in defending it and you don't practice your faith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can easily deprive you of it at the hands of the oppressors and the wrongdoers. We're no better than our brothers and sisters in Syria who have lost everything. And recognize, my brothers and sisters, that the enemies of Islam, through Islamophobia, the Islamophobia network, they can never take our faith away from us. We can only choose to give it up. And that they target us because of the potential force for good that we have. They recognize that, as Malcolm X has said, Islam has the solutions for the problems that this country suffers from. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, over 1400 years ago, he solved the worst problems that were plaguing his society that are plaguing our society today, like racism, like social and economic injustice. And this is why, as American Muslims, we must be proud of our faith and not simply be calling for our acceptance, that please don't ban us, please don't make us illegal. That's a very humiliating position to be in. Rather, we must be proudly offering what our faith has to offer this country. Recognize that Islam has the solutions to the problems that this country faces. And as American Muslims, we must never waste time telling people what Islam is not. Rather, we must invest our time in showing people what Islam is about. Showing them through service. That's how you win people over, through service to humanity. Excel at what you do and serve the people, and invest your time and your energy and your resources in sharing the beauty of our deen. My brothers and sisters, America is thirsty for the answers to the problems that Islam and only Islam has. And that is why you find some of the greatest Americans. Malcolm X was Muslim. Muhammad Ali, the greatest, was Muslim. And it's important we remind our fellow Americans that they are the ones who speak for us. And then we emulate them. What made Malcolm X great? What made Muhammad Ali great? Study their lives and study the seerah, study the sunnah. Recognize what made them great was them excelling at what they did and translating that into service for humanity. That is the key for us, my brothers and sisters, to overcome. And don't give up hope. It's easy when things get difficult sometimes to fall into hopelessness and despair. But recognize when we say, well, things are against us and we can't have any impact, that's simply us, unfortunately, falling into laziness. We take a beautiful lesson from the life of Hajar radiallahu anha. When she was left in the desert with her son Ismail alayhi salam, and she did not have water, what did she do? Did she simply cry and pray to Allah, Ya Allah, send me water? No. Did she run around looking for water? No. She combined both the prayer and the action. And that's what we must do. We put our trust in Allah. At night we worship Allah, but in the day we defend the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we serve the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the key, combining prayer and action. And never give up hope. Remember, we're not responsible for the results. And frankly, whether we are strong or weak, it is irrelevant. What matters is what is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our connection is not determined by the results of our efforts, but it is determined by the sincerity and the energy of our efforts. What effort are we putting forth? We're not responsible for the results, but we're certainly responsible to put forth our best effort. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam taught us that if you have a seed, what should you do? And the day of judgment is about to start. You should plant the seed. And that's what we must do as American Muslims, plant the seed. And trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Plant the seed of effort, plant the seed of education, plant the seed of challenging Islamophobia. And a very, very important point, and I'll end with these two critical things. I know we have 4 minutes left. Is that there are 3 key areas as American Muslims we must invest in. Number one, in the media. The media is what shapes public perception. And frankly, American Muslims, we don't have a right to complain about the increase in Islamophobia, because while the enemies of Islam have worked hard to demonize Islam, we really haven't invested in these three key areas. How many, and they are law, media, and politics, how many communities are out there that have tens of thousands of Muslims but don't have a full-time Muslim representing the Muslim community in the media and engaging in the media to make sure Islam is accurately and the Muslim community is accurately represented? Countless communities are like that. How many communities don't have a full-time person engaged in government affairs, ensuring that our elected officials understand our community and our concerns? The majority of communities I visit across America, I say, how many Muslims do you have? They say 50,000. I say, okay, well, how many are working full-time to represent you in your state legislature or at the federal level? They'll say 0. I say astaghfirullah, that's your shortcoming, not Islamophobia's fault, it's your fault. How many full-time lawyers are working to defend you if you face discrimination or harassment free of charge? They say 0. I say astaghfirullah, that's your fault, not their fault. So our problem is not how much Islamophobes are doing, it's how little are we doing. We must invest in media which shapes public perception and the political process which shapes the laws we all must live under. And a lot of these fights are happening at local political levels. For example, efforts to ban books that speak about Islamic history. That's happening at local school boards. We can very easily have Muslims involved in the local school board. Why don't we? We need to increase that. So the political process. And third is the legal process, which defends the rights and enforces those laws. Those are the three critical areas, my brothers and sisters, that we must invest in to grow and flourish as a community. And we should all try to do our part. You know, one of the things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns, He says, وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَعُونَ. He describes the hypocrites, they don't do the little amount. Not doing the little amount is very dangerous. Right? We spoke about the Islamophobia industry spending over $200 million to demonize Islam. Well, if every Muslim in America spends $1 a day to challenge Islamophobia through institutions like CARE and others, or ICNA, or any of the others that are involved in Dawah or civil rights work, that's over $150 million a month that we would have to challenge Islamophobia. So again, the problem is not, don't look at how much they're doing. They're going to do what they want to do. The question is, what are we doing to challenge that? What are we doing to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by defending His deen and by serving His creation? That is the key to our success. And finally, a very, very important point, my brothers and sisters, and that is that sometimes the response to Islamophobia is people turn away from the deen. They turn away from the sunnah. They turn away from the sharia. Don't fall into that mistake. Don't empower the Islamophobes to win by turning away from the deen. I'll give you this very beautiful story that I'll end with, or this touching story of one of the refugees from Syria who lost everything that he had. He said, "Ma dal ma'ishi," I've lost everything. He swam across the Mediterranean. He literally lost everything. Everything that we sell out our deen to get, he lost it all. His job, career, family, friends. "Ma dal ma'ishi," I've lost everything. "Ma'i dini dal bas," only my religion remains with me. That's the only thing I didn't lose. Why? He answered it in one word, "Jua," it is inside me. The most valuable thing we have, it is our deen. And alhamdulillah, the most valuable thing we have is the only thing that can never be taken away from us. We can only choose to give it up. Don't let your response to Islamophobia be you giving up on the deen. Rather, let it be you holding on to the deen more. One of the problems, my brothers and sisters, is people respond to Islamophobia by possibly, giving up the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the inward and the outward, or changing their names. And that doesn't even work. In New York City, the first group of Muslims they spied on in New York City were the Muslims who changed their name from Muhammad to Mo, saying, what are they trying to hide? And Allah sending us a powerful message, you won't win by hiding your identity. So I conclude with this in the minute that we have remaining. Let your response to Islamophobia be holding on to the deen more. Don't give up the sunnah. We need more of the sunnah. Sunnah is a rahmah. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Meaning the more sunnah we have in our life, the more rahmah and mercy and success we will have in our life. And it has very practical consequence. Alhamdulillah, I mentioned that CARE is one of the strongest civil rights organizations. One of the reasons is a brother, mashallah, a local brother, donated over $500,000 to us. And his wife was speaking to my wife, and she told her, she said, the reason my husband has donated so much to this organization is that when Brother Shibly was speaking, and it was time, he was thirsty, he wanted to take a drink, my husband saw him sitting down to drink, following the sunnah. It was that connection to the Sunnah that inspired the love in that brother's heart to donate so much wealth that we can build such a strong civil rights organization. Never underestimate, and that's not to mention about the reward, which is the real reason we do things. So don't let your response be that you turn away from the Sunnah, rather hold on to the Sunnah more and excel in whatever fields you do, and be proud of your Muslim identity and use it to serve the greater community as a whole. Be champions of justice for all. Alhamdulillah, I'm very proud that in Florida, whoever's oppressed, they come to the Muslims to defend, for us to defend them. That's our dawah. And that's also how we challenge Islamophobia, by serving others. And we conclude with this beautiful ayah of the Quran, two beautiful ayahs. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Do not grieve and do not despair, for surely you will rise high if you are believers. Surely we will be stronger. And subhanAllah, we're seeing this every single day with the Hamza effect, where when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was being mocked, Hamza radiallahu anh became Muslim and supported him. Right then and there, he said, you're mocking Muhammad? Okay, I am with Muhammad. In the same way, today we are seeing so many Americans, alhamdulillah, who are frustrated and upset with the attacks against the Muslim community, pledging to stand with us, even embracing the faith and standing stronger with us. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اصبروا وصابروا ورابطوا واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون. If you want to be successful, spiru, hold on to your deen strongly. Don't give up your deen. If you sell out your faith and your identity because of some Islamophobia, you're not having sabr. Remember, those who have sabr will enter paradise without questioning and will be rewarded without measure. So spiru, be patient. Wasabiru, compete in patience. Compete in defending your deen. Do not let their hatred for Islam be stronger than your love for Islam. Do not let them give more wealth and money and resources in attacking the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than you put in defending his message. Pamela Geller offered $10,000 to whoever can draw a cartoon mocking the Prophet the most. What have you invested in defending his message? Don't stand before Allah and let him show you the enemies of Islam have put more energy in attacking your deen than you've put in defending it through service to humanity and through education. So sbiru, sabiru, commit in patience, warabitu, defend your community, wattaqullah, and do it with taqwa so you can be successful. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us, keep us steadfast, help us overcome the challenging times that lie ahead of us, and allow us to find strength through our faith, find strength through our Muslim identity, and help us by holding on and reviving the message and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, become champions for all humanity, all who are oppressed, and a source of mercy for this country and in this world, and through that overcome Islamophobia, inshallah. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.